If you've watched me for a while, you probably have some sense of what I do, but you don't fully know the whole story of how I got here. And I want to tell it to you today because it's not dramatic, it's not special, but because there's a very good chance that pieces of my story are also pieces of yours, especially if you're a nurse. And I want you to see them and see them clearly so you can decide what you want to do with your own version. So stay with me for about 8 minutes. One woman's actual life, see how much of it is you. So let me tell you who I was for most of my adult life. I was a nurse. And before that, all I thought about was being a nurse. And that was the whole answer. When people asked me what I did, I said, I'm a nurse. When they asked me who I was, I said, I'm a nurse. When I filled out forms, when I introduced myself, when I described my life to a stranger, you got it, nurse. That was the identity, and that was the whole thing. And I was and still am good at it. I've been a nurse for 30 years, and I love this profession because I love helping people. And it's hard to explain to people who don't do it. Here's the thing about only being a nurse. And believe me, you're not only a nurse. When your whole identity is a job that requires you to give away pieces of yourself to strangers every day, your time, your energy, your body, your emotional bandwidth, you eventually start giving away pieces of you so automatically that you stop noticing it. That was me. That was me for decades. I was very good at giving myself away and putting everyone else first, and I didn't notice because everyone around me was doing the same thing. So if you're in healthcare, you know exactly what I'm describing. You have probably been the woman that I was. And believe me, I didn't realize how bad it was until I removed myself from that kind of a situation. So for a long time, that identity, it worked. It was hard, but it worked. I loved the work. I loved the rush. I loved the patients. I loved the team. I complained about the hours the way we all complain about the hours, but I never really questioned the whole thing until me complaining about the hours was honestly taking a toll on me. And then sometime in my 40s, it started to crack. Not dramatically, but quietly at first. My body started to change. Perimenopause showed up before I even knew what it was called. I was tired more often. Sleep didn't fix it anymore. Shifts that used to run me a little ragged now ran me a lot. And there was something else, something harder to name, where the same work I had been doing for 30 years suddenly cost me more than it used to give me back. I want to be honest with you. It wasn't a burnout crisis. It wasn't an emergency. It was much quieter than that. This was the slow, sober recognition that the identity that had carried me for 20 plus years was starting to not fit anymore. And I didn't have a plan for that. Nobody teaches you what to do when the identity you built your whole life around starts to loosen and crumble before you. I have told this before, but I'm gonna tell it again. Because it's the moment my life split into before and after. It was a normal work day. I had worked the weekend, I had a day off, and then I was coming back in. I sat down to chart, and honestly, the fulfillment just wasn't there anymore. And I just couldn't tell if it was a daily thing or I was just done. And out of nowhere, a sentence dropped into my brain. I am trading my time and my physical body for money. And I couldn't unhear it. It was true. And once I heard it, I could not unhear it. Now I want to tell you what I did with that sentence, because this is the part I've never fully explained. I didn't quit initially. I didn't blow up my life initially. I did not book a retreat or find a life coach or make a 5-year plan. I sat with the sentence for months. And while I sat with the sentence, I kind of moved around a little bit. Every shift, that sentence would show up quietly, and I would notice it. That was all I did for maybe 6 months. And then I started to ask a different question. Not how do I make this stop, but what would it look like if my body was not the only lever I had to make money? Small question, not dramatic, just a real one. I want to be very clear because this totally matters. The decision to start building something on the side was not brave. It was not a leap. It was not a before and after movie moment. It was me asking a small, honest question over and over until an opportunity crossed my path that actually fit the shape of the question. And I said yes to it quietly without knowing what would happen. That is what most starts look like, by the way. Not dramatic, not brave, just a small, honest yes to something after months of asking the small, honest question. And did I know where it was going to take me? I didn't. But what I did know was the way I was going was not the way I wanted to go anymore. So I'm going to tell you what the early days actually looked like. Because if you're expecting the highlight reel version, this is going to disappoint you. And that is the whole point. I didn't make money quickly. I didn't go viral. I didn't immediately love it. I was overwhelmed. There were months where I wondered if I was fooling myself. There were nights I did 5 minutes of business work between shifts and thought, this is pathetic. This is going to go nowhere. But something else was also happening quietly behind the scenes. I was building a habit. I was building a skill I didn't have before. I was building conversations with women I would never have talked to otherwise. And more than any of that, I was building a version of myself that was not only a nurse. That version was small at first. And she was almost invisible. But she was there and she was real. And over time, over years, honestly, not months, that small version and vision got bigger. I started earning some money eventually. I earned some skills, definitely, but mostly I earned something else. A sense that my body did not have to be the only currency I had. So here's where I am today. I'm still a nurse. I am still working 312s. And I am loving this job. I haven't left healthcare and I don't plan to. But I'm not only a nurse anymore. I'm also a woman who built something on the side, slowly, imperfectly, without a big splashy moment. And that has changed everything. Not because of the money, though that is a real factor, but because I know now in my body that if my situation changed tomorrow, I have more than one way to take care of myself. That is a different kind of safety than the paycheck kind. That is the kind of safety that lets you make different choices. I picked up an extra shift last month because I wanted to, not because I had to. That is what all of this was for. Not the business, the choice. So here's why I'm telling you all of this. And if you've stayed with me this whole time, you really know what I'm talking about. Somewhere in what I just described, there's probably a beat that is also yours. The identity that stopped fitting. The quiet cracking in your 40s that said, I can't do this for much longer. The sentence that dropped uninvited into your brain one day. The small, honest question you have been avoiding asking because you thought you were stuck in the situation you were in. The invitation you've already crossed paths with but haven't said yes to yet. You don't have to say yes to what I said yes to. You have to say yes to whatever your version is. The specific thing matters less than the fact that you are honest with yourself about what is not working and what you're not happy with. And honest with yourself about what would need to happen for you to have more of a choice in your own life. And let me tell you, as a nurse, I didn't feel like I had that choice for a long time, but now I do. So let me tell you what I do plainly. I help women in healthcare build a business in the beauty industry so that extra shifts become a choice and not a necessity. That is the specific thing I help with. But the bigger thing, the underneath thing, is helping women who are in the identity that stopped fitting phase of their lives. Find the small, honest question they have been avoiding. Once you find that question, everything else is just a matter of time. And I'm telling you, it was the best thing I ever did. So if any part of my story landed with you today, the sentence you can't unhear, the shift that you walked into and didn't feel fulfilled, the small, honest question you keep avoiding, come and start and tell me which beat was yours. I'll reach out personally, nurse to nurse, woman to woman, because start is not a purchase. It is a conversation, and a conversation is how mine started too. I'll see you down there in the comments.